And joining me in the studio to review GE's $1 billion investment project is Lazarus Angbazo. He's the CEO of GE Nigeria. Thank you so much, Lazarus, for joining us, and it's great to always interact with you. GE is a massive company, and so it's always exciting to see many of these companies come into Nigeria, and GE clearly has made that statement of intent to invest big and for the long term. So can you just talk us through how your portfolio is playing out right now? I know you have a huge project in Calabar. We'll get to that in a bit. But so far, what has been your experience in Nigeria? Nigeria is seen as a difficult place, but a big opportunity in Africa. What has been your experience?
Certainly, first of all, thank you for having me. We've been in the country for a long time, but over the last few years, our strategy has been to focus on the areas that really matter to the country. So the key infrastructure areas like power, oil and gas, healthcare, transportation, both rail as well as aviation. So those are the key areas, and we have a country-to-company strategy that has allowed us to actually focus on those areas, and we're quite excited about the opportunities that those areas represent for GE.
All right, and talk to us about some of the partnerships you've been able to forge in Nigeria to get into the market. I know there's a local government policy, and a lot of companies have to really adjust to that to get the best out of Nigeria. Talk to us about the kind of partnerships you're forming here.
So the company is a very big company with a lot of capabilities. So we started out with an umbrella partnership called a country-to-company, and then we've cascaded it into sector MOUs with the government. And in order to be able to execute on some of these initiatives, we've also had to partner with local companies. So we've got a strategic cooperation agreement with Dangote, for example, with the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund, with Transcorp. Across the spectrum, you know, we're doing a lot of work with the Ministry of Health, and we're doing a lot of work with private entrepreneurs in the medical area as well. So we think that we're building a coalition really that will allow us to actually achieve for the country what the country wants to achieve. We're aligning with the priorities and the aspirations of the Nigerian company, the Nigerian country. Right.
Let's talk a bit about that huge investment you're making in Calabar, a $250 million investment in an assembly plant. Talk us through that and and the timelines for completion of that project and what it could mean for especially for that environment that you're going to be based.
So clearly, the investment is a major commitment by GE, but it's been on the back of a long period of making quite significant investments already. We've got about 400 people in Nigeria. We've got offices in 4 locations, sites in about another 6. So we've had a large footprint, but the investment itself is a significant commitment that shows that we look at Nigeria now as a hub for GE, not just for the Nigerian market, but for the rest of the West and Central African market. So the investment itself is $250 million to build a multimodal facility that will do servicing of the power generating equipment that we have in country. We are the biggest install base. And then we're also going to do some manufacturing of a number of our technologies that help the oil companies in exploration, production, transportation, as well as processing of oil and gas. So we're very excited about it. But it's beyond the factory, right? We're also doing training, you know, to develop the human capacity that is needed to make this investment sustainable. And then finally, what I'm really, really excited about is we're developing the supply chain for the country as well to put the country on a global competitive base. And so we're developing our partners who are existing around the world and bringing them to Nigeria to co-invest and create that snowball effect, but also to facilitate partnerships with other Nigerian companies. So in the end, what we're trying to do is for GE, but even much more bigger, is for the country.
Right, let's talk a bit about what you're doing in transportation, especially with the rail lines. Talk us through some of the projects you have in that space.
So a few years ago, under the country-to-company agreement, we partnered with the Ministry of Transport to actually expand and renew the locomotive fleet. So if you look at all of the locomotives that are kind of running the country right now, they are GE. Again, another area where GE has a large, probably the biggest install base. And so the partnership that we have with the Ministry of Transport and the NRC, and also as we're thinking about the execution, working with the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund, is how do we continue to expand the locomotive fleet to improve the logistics system of the country. Country is growing at 7%. Without the logistics system, it's almost impossible to actually sustain that growth rate. Now we know that only 1% of the freight in this country goes on rail. Yeah. We've got about 190 million metric tons of freight that goes on road. So it's an ambitious plan. It's in line with what President Goodluck Jonathan wants to do in order to continue to grow the economy.
Right, let's talk a bit about what you're doing in the power sector. And you mentioned your country-to-company agreement. And I want to hear about how you're looking to achieve some of these targets, 10,000 megawatts over 10 years.
Okay, so with the power sector, this is an area that I think that the country has done well. The government has done a fairly decent job actually in establishing the regulatory framework. Privatization phase 1 is complete. Private owners are taking over. Phase 2 is on the way. You've got a very transparent, predictable, and attractive tariff in place. A couple of the PPAs have been signed. So basically you have a private market that has taken off or is about to take off. And if you want to define GE by one category, it is a power company. And so we look at this sort of development as ideal for GE, and the partnership that we therefore committed to build 10,000 incremental megawatts, it's exactly to sort of take advantage of those opportunities, but also to help Nigeria achieve what it needs to achieve in terms of sustained economic growth, which is impossible without the power sector being solved.
What would that mean? Would that mean that GE would actually own power plants, or how exactly practically does this work? Or is it more of the partnerships like you have, for instance, with Transcore?
So it's a combination of things, right? I mean, we are not a utility company, but we do virtually everything else. So we're helping local Nigerian companies with development, with execution, obviously with the equipment, with the servicing, with the operations and management. And so if you look at the companies that have been privatized, we're in partnerships at various degrees of involvement in terms of helping them really convert those assets into real productive assets at this point. That's number one. Number two, the IPP market has come around, and it's about to take off as well. So we are working with indigenous private developers of power projects and doing some development funding for that, putting equity in one or two of those areas. But in the end, what we think we see is that the 10,000 megawatts is not wishful thinking. We really have projects that we're moving forward, and we're really excited about it.
Right.
Again, great credit to the government of President Goodluck Jonathan in terms of actually progressing the transformation and the reform of the sector.
Right, I really have to wrap it up now, but final word on your thoughts on the environment. I spoke about that at the start, but your thoughts about the Nigerian opportunity. It's a big risk, but a lot of people say it's also a big opportunity. Your experience so far?
Well, we've been here 50 years, and the country is big. It's got a dynamic population. Again, as I said, the country has done a fairly decent job of reforms, right? And sometimes we get lost in the day-to-day politics, but good track record of reforms in power, some work going on in the oil and gas, in the customs, in agriculture. So there's every reason for us to be. If Nigeria is not your number one destination, it should be in the top 2 or top 3.